Time now to bring in one of our favorite people in the world, Blythe Brumleve, talking about all things logistics as well as all things marketing there as well. Blythe, thanks so much for joining us here on Wednesday, this first day of November.
Thank you guys for having me. Jags are in first place. We got F3 next week. It's a good time to be alive.
You bring us up a very interesting point, which I'll use your Jaguars as a nice segue into this. We want to talk about marketing in terms of the ebb and flow of things. In terms of, Greg Miller wrote an interesting piece about the fact that a lot of freight now headed back to the West Coast, going to LA Long Beach, as opposed to going through the Panama Canal with the issues that are going down there that are possibly transfer onto the East Coast there as well. The ILWU negotiation is done there as well, so there's not that hurdle there to overcome as well. Again, kind of like the Jaguars in the fact that there is ebb and flow. You went to the AFC Championship game in year 2, then not so much, and now find yourselves in first place at this particular point in time. How, as a marketer, do you deal with this ebb and flow? Is there a difference between how you market in the good times and the bad times, and also with that geographically, if you need to go in different areas of the country, does it change as well?
There's absolutely an ebb and flow when it comes to marketing, especially when you think about how social media really came into the scene about 15 years ago and how social media has been kind of changed over the last few years, where you had a situation where the first 10 or so years was really about who you know and celebrity culture and high influencer culture, where it mattered how many followers you had. It mattered your perception wise as far as value is concerned. Over the last few years, sort of the TikTokification is what they call it, of social media has really just thrown a wrench into that entire history of social. And so when you think about it from that lens, where somebody with no followers can post something to social, TikTok in particular, which other social media platforms have followed, somebody can have no followers, barely any engagement, and on the second video that they post, then it goes viral and it has a chance to change their lives, change their business. And so thinking about it from the lens of social media has shifted to interest-based first instead of who you know. It's actually kind of the opposite on social channels, where you don't necessarily want to follow the people you know anymore, or you're very conscious about what you post because so many people that you know personally are following you. Whereas if you post interest-based content first, then that creates a whole new avenue, especially for businesses and brands.
And diving into that interest base, especially we even see the growth of FreightX, for example. If someone's looking to get into that space, do you think that's more of a lower barrier of entry from a strategy-wise, or just focus on a narrow topic, or does it require specific things that, your playbook compared to I'm going to become a brand like in the days past? I think of like your Paris Hiltons, your Kardashians, where the whole brand was built on themselves. Is there any changes? What if I want to become the next Freight Kardashian?
Well, if you want to become the next Freight Kardashian, which I love that term, by the way, then X is the perfect place to start, because you don't necessarily have to focus on video or audio. You can focus on the written word, because video is very intimidating to a lot of people. They don't necessarily want to be on camera. They don't want to they hate hearing the sound of their own voice. And so starting with the written word, X is the perfect place to do that. Even LinkedIn has been one of those go-to places for the last handful of years. But X, especially within the freight community, has really taken over. And it's one of those opportunities where you can join in on the conversation with people you never thought you would be able to have a conversation with. CEOs of companies. You can put your face to a brand. Founder-driven marketing is one of the best kept hidden secrets in this industry, where founders need to be out there actively talking about what they're building, why they're building it, the services and solutions, and how they just think about the industry in general. And X is a perfect place to do that. And a lot of people say, well, yes, you need to create a profile, but starting up a profile, being able to follow relative people within the industry, seeing what they post, what gets the most attraction, what gets the most engagement, following it from almost like a sports perspective, where you're studying the film, you're studying the tape, and you're seeing what performs well. And if you see something that's interesting, you respond to it. You have your own commentary on it, and then you create your own posts on it. And so having the listen approach first and study the film, study the tape, which is something you should actually be doing ongoing, not just when you start, but being able to watch what works, follow instantly the people that are already within the industry, and being able to see that live news reaction from other founders in freight, other thought leaders and industry executives. You can have all that entire experience from the highest level of employees to, some of the other lower level in, from administration to HR, to other folks that work, within the trenches of being a broker, being a driver, some of those firsthand experiences. You can have all of that on X, whereas, some of these other platforms, LinkedIn, for example, is much more geared towards the founder sort of executive level, whereas X, it's kind of a free-for-all for all of the entire freight industry.
Let's talk a little bit more about geographically, because one of the big things that we're seeing in the last couple of years or so in an area that's going to explode, it looks like it's going to explode certainly, is the nearshoring trend going to Mexico and Central America, and then moving freight up through that and into the United States there as well. If you're a trucking company and you're looking to capitalize on that in terms of, does your message change as opposed to watching others and seeing how they're trying to get into that new market as that starts to trend and that starts to become more of a draw, certainly financially, to trucking companies in terms of just catching that, as opposed to, again, just basically doing the same old, if you will?
Yeah, for sure. You don't want to, if you talk about the same things over and over again, it can become a little stale. But for a lot of marketers, you need to figure out a way to say the same thing 1,000 different ways. And so being able to get that, walk that fine line of having a balanced message of the services that you offer, but then also using that as sort of like a part of your overall Venn diagram of where are your customers hanging out, where are your services and solutions, and how can you sort of package that together and figure out where those similarities are messaging wise? Because at the end of the day, you're essentially day trading attention. That's what Gary Vaynerchuk calls it, is day trading attention, being platform agnostic, going to where the attention already is, but also where there isn't a high competition, where the ads are dominating, where platforms like Instagram, it's very hard to break through on the noise on that platform, because it's so heavily dominated with people who are already posting content and there's already a ton of ads. Now for X/Twitter, for example, we don't have, as when I say we, and the freight industry, it's growing, but there isn't, it's not saturated yet. So there's still a tremendous amount of opportunity to be posting things that are interest-based for your audience, but then also on a platform that needs people posting. The overwhelming majority of people who are on social media, they never engage, they never post, and they never respond. So you can stand out from the crowd just simply by existing on the platform and responding to comments, and then getting to a place where you feel like you can start day trading some of that attention on one platform, and then you learn those skills, and then those skills that you learned for that one channel can then be applied to several other channels.
Blythe, Brumleve knows all. Where can we find you on the internet? Where can we find your stuff if people want to get in touch with you and learn more?
Well, you can find me on everythingislogistics.com. That's where all my content is. And I will also be at F3 next week if you want to say hello in person.
Perfect. We'll look for you there.
Yep.
And always a pleasure to have you on. See you next week.
Thank you. See y'all.
All right. Blythe Brumleve joining us there as well. You can join us at F3 as well, coming up next week.